Okay, talking to myself. I'm starting this meeting. Today is Wednesday, June 10th, 25th day of Sivan. Rabbi Smith. Oh, Moshe, thank you for coming on.
Hey, how you doing?
Baruch Hashem, I'm starting to talk to myself. I thank Rabbi Smith for allowing me to review and learn together with you this year today, and anybody else that comes on or listens later. And we just enjoyed the wonderful chasna with Yitzi Lebensberg of his daughter Malki in New York City. That was fantastic, and
Yeah,
mazel tov to him and his family, and of course Malki and her chusn. Okay, and we thank Hashem for allowing us to learn, and we hope brings Mashiach soon, and Refuah Shlem, all the people who needs Refuah Shlemus, etc. Okay, Rabbi Smith told me he finished on Lamed Ches, that's 38A2, if you're using an art scroll, right about 1/3 down the middle of the page. It starts Amarav Chisda. Do you have that? Let me see another landmark for.
Yeah, good.
Okay, you got it? Okay. Amarav Chisda. So, by the way, the first part of this page is really interesting. So, if you didn't get a chance to chazir it yet, please do. All right. So here, Amarav Chisda. Okay. Pirkus she'amru b'sav shchita. All right. So Rav Chisda says, I have a tradition that jerking, of which the sages spoke, must occur at the end of Shechita. Now, what is Pirkus? The concept we'll be talking about is that we have to have signs of life. You know, there's like life after death. We need signs of life after Shechita. What point in Shechita we'll discuss in order to say that the shechita was valid and that it was not done on an animal that was, they referred to previously, I think the word miskenes, which is basically an animal in sakana, an animal that's about to die. So first thought might come to you, well, if it's about to die, why isn't it a treifa? Well, they didn't find apparently anything on this animal, holes or this or that, that would disqualify it to be a treifa. It's just, it's a very old animal. It's about to die, and they want to try and get a shechit in it instead of becoming an avela. They could have it as a kosher for kosher meat. Makes sense. Okay, so apparently, right after the shechita. Now, whether it's the middle, the beginning, or the end of the shechita will be the machlokas, because there's always a machlokas. This animal does certain type of what they've been referring to as convulsions or jerking. And the Gemara's term is pirkus. Basically, what that is, good morning, rabbis, father. We're at Lamed Ches, Omed Aleph, Amarav Chisda. So apparently, we're discussing Amarav Chisda, pirkus, Shamru B'Sav Shchita. So this jerking, this sign of life that occurs at some point right after the shechita process is an absolute necessity for the shechita to be kosher and for us to eat the animal. So let's discuss this. Rav Chisda will now discuss this tradition that he has for saying this. My B'Sav Shechita. What is meant by the end of Shechita? Emtza Shechita, he says, it means during the Shechita. It's just funny. Well, he's calling it the end of Shechita, but he's saying, no, it refers to Miller Shechita. Any questions that pop in your mind, just wait, because this Gemara really isn't that hard, and everything will just kind of settle in.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm following through. We're good.
What?
I said I'm following through. We're good.
Okay. Why then was it referred to as the end of Shechita? So, logical question. You said the end, then you said really means the middle. And now you say, so why is it refer to the end? La puke tchila Shechita delo. To exclude jerking that happens at the beginning of Shechita. So his main, how do I mute? Hold on.
I think go on your mute and say mute all. I'm not sure how. Or
go on my mute. But I mute me.
or where it says more. I'm not sure.
Okay, mute my audio. I'm looking. Hold on. Oh, more. No, it's not saying anything, but all's quiet on the Western Front. Okay, so again, my besaf shchita. So what is meant by at the end of shchita? And he said bemtza shchita. He says la pruke tchila shchita lo. So any signs of life vis-a-vis a jerking or convulsive process that occurs immediately at the beginning of shchita, that's not sufficient to prove that the animal was actually alive enough for the shchita to be appropriate. Okay, to make the animal, the meat kosher to eat. So to support this, Amar Rav Chisda says, Menahani Mile. So how do I know this? That's a good point. This man, he's going to say, because I learned it in the Mishnah. Behema daka shapasta yada below hechsira. A small animal, all right, what's a small animal? A goat, a sheep, a lamb, as opposed to a cow, all right? A small animal, if it extended its foreleg but didn't retract it, all right, psula, it's not kosher. In other words, what he's saying, the mere movement of an extension of the foreleg, so there's two, listen carefully, there's two items here. One is, he's saying, if it just extended the foreleg right after the moment of shechita, early on, all right, as opposed to pulling it back, all right, and so we extended but didn't retract it, and we're talking about a small animal, that's psula. Guess what? That's not kosher. All right, so if you want to guess why, you might say, wait, if you've ever seen, if you've done taharas or whatever, it's typically the body after death goes into rigor mortis, which is, like a very hard extension, and when you find a dead animal, typically the limbs are extended. I want to show it on myself, just to understand. Right, Amos. So when did this happen? Elam b'saf shchita, if you're going to say that this action, right now he's just talking about just the mere extension of the foreleg, without the retraction. If this happened at the end of shechita, kohechi techo v'tezo, must the animal live and go on, continue living, even if its throat has been cut? Clearly not. That's not a good answer. He's saying, hey, no animal is going to live forever, especially after it's been shechted, right? So what do you mean it's got to do it after the shechita? I mean, it's like, how much after, is it like a kazayas, kabetza, is it a second, 3 seconds, 10 minutes, time to run a marathon? Was it, So obviously that can't be the answer. So again, I'm reading right from the ArtScroll and then just explaining it in the vernacular. Thus, once slaughter has been completed, merely extending the foreleg should suffice to permit it. That's his Havamina. So he's saying, rather, it's not evident that the Mishnah speaks of jerking that occurs during shechita. Again, what he said above is his. Even though he initially said, Rav Chisda said it's at the end of shechita, he then reclarified it to mean mid shechita. And that's what he's questioning right now. So does this mean what we're talking about is happening mid shechita? So Rava disputes Rav Chisda's proof. So now let's just jump to Rava, see what Rav Chisda says. Amalei Rava. Rava said to Rav Chisda, Le'alam b'sav shechita. In fact, jerking it, as the sages said, must occur at the end of shechita. So why then? So he's kind of splitting the question. He says, why then does merely extending a foreleg not suffice? Remember, there's two things going on here. One is the timing of when this happens, before, during, or after Shechita, all right? And Rav Chisda said it was in the middle of Shechita, all right? And the second comment that he learned from the Mishnah was extending the foreleg itself wasn't enough, all right? In other words, it had to be a retraction. So let me stop for a moment and just say something. Why are we going into this? We're going into this because we want to show this wasn't just a rigor mortis type, a hardening, of the body after death, a reaction, that this was a sign of life, not a sign of death, all right? And for a sign of life, there has to be some, and we'll have different examples, signs of something that would requires, let's use the term that we use by people, koach gavra, all right? Something that the animal does. So stop for a moment and think of oneself as a person. I don't know what else you think of yourself as a behemoth, but there's what's called our anti-gravity muscles. Our anti-gravity muscles are stronger muscles. Why? Because they have to work against gravity. The ones that gravity aid, they don't get so strong. So think of your arm. If you're standing up, it's usually hanging by the side. Why? Because gravity pulls it down. Okay? How do you bring your arm up? With your biceps and other muscles, with your anti-gravity muscles. So here by the behemoth, Daka we're talking about, the muscles that will flex the foreleg, all right, are technically the stronger muscle because it's the anti-gravity muscle. Maybe. I don't know, I'm trying to think of how to understand it. We'll see how it flows. Okay, let's see where we up to. Sha'ani Omer. So when I say koshen, I also can the shchita, any animal that extends its foreleg but does not do this at the end of shchita, it's certain that it's all departed from it before the slaughter was completed. So obviously, he's saying if it extended at the end of Shrita, obviously it's a dead animal. So again, that doesn't prove that the animal was alive at the time of Shrita, which is a necessity to make it to kosher for eating, and not that it's a nevela that we happen to do an anatomy class on. So the Gemara presents a second opinion when it comes to pirkus. Pirkus, again, is the Gemara's term for this jerking or convulsing or these movements, the tonic-clonic movements of the animal after it dies. And let's see. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, let's see what he says. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says, Pirkus, Shamru B'tchila Shrita, the Pirkus that can occur at the beginning of Shrita. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, what did he say? Mina Amina Lay. Where did I learn this from? The Snan. So he brings another Mishnah. He's going to bring Rav Shimon. Rav Shimon said, Shochet B'layla. The guy does shchit at night. Now, we're not supposed to do shchit at night because you can't see what you're doing. I mean, that makes sense. Except we have electricity nowadays. So technically, if you have the light on in the shochet house, you can do, 24/6 shchita, if there's no yontif to it. In other words, as long as it's not job, you can do shchita at night because the lights are on, right? But at that time, they're talking about there wasn't lights. So shochet b'layla ulamacha matzah keselim leim dam. Well, so let's say he did the shchita at night when it was dark. He knew everything by heart where to put his thing. It's like muscle memory. Okay, ulamacha matzah keselim leim dam. And the following morning, he found the walls were full of blood. Now, what is this term, the walls were full of blood? You see, Rashi says, and we're going to learn, it's talking about the whole neck, like an upper body area where the shechita is done, was loaded with blood. It wasn't just a trickle, all right? A mamish like killed the bull, except this right now we're talking about a little animal, all right? So, you know, I don't know if anyone, I know Lubavitchers don't see it, but there's a movie producer named Quentin Tarantino. And every time he makes a movie, there's a lot of bloodshed. And whenever they do the bloodshed, the blood spurts out like insanely. This is his like, you know, his signature of his movies. If you saw a picture of blood shooting out, and violently, that's Quentin Tarantino. So too here, he's saying in the Gemara, Lahabdil, all right, if there's signs that the blood really shot out, that was the animal had to be alive because blood is pumping, the heart's still pumping. So when it's shechted, all of a sudden the blood is still, whoa, shooting out all over the chest. So if they see the animal in the morning and the blood is still all over the chest, they can assume the animal had been alive at the time of the shechita. This is according to Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak. So he says that animal is kosher. That animal is kosher to eat. All right? Shezinka, because the animal certainly spouted blood, which constitutes jerking. So he equates the spouting of blood as a sign of life, analogous to the jerking or the pirkus that we've been mentioned till now, in the flexion of the upper or extremity, well, it's not upper extremity in the animal, of the foreleg of the hemadaka, the small animal. With Midas Rabbi Eliezer, and this goes along with the criteria of Rabbi Eliezer for determining the vitality of the animal. For Amar Shmuel, and Shmuel says, Koslei Beis Shchita Shaninu. The Mishnah speaks of the walls of the throat adjoining the place of the incision. So what I already cheated in mentioning, Rashi has explained in the name of Shmuel. In other words, the walls don't mean it's on the walls of the, like in a, CSI, crime scene. They come and they see the splatter of blood on the walls. That's for Shalom and etc. They're talking about just the splatter from the shechita on the animal itself. Now, all this is good and well if you're saying this was at the beginning of the shechita. Rav Shimon's ruling is then satisfactory, so it shouldn't be a problem. For in that case, regardless of when in the slaughtering the animal spouted blood, it was sufficient to constitute jerking. Ella iyama b'saf shechita. But what if you say that the jerking has to take place at the end of shechita to render an animal kosher? Let us be concerned that perhaps this animal spouted the blood only at the beginning of the shechita. So even though it was a great spout, the blood was off, but that happened early on, right after. But the spout, he's saying the spouting still had to continue, the spirka still had to continue, the animal still had to show signs of life at the end of the shechita as well. Okay, so since turning the page in the art scroll 38A3, all right, and we're in the bottom of Lamed Ches Amud Aleph, just opposite where Tosfos says Rav Amar Pirkus, just in case you lost your place. So Rav Shimon, Rav Shimon is not concerned about this possibility. We must conclude that this jerking suffices even if it takes place at the beginning of shechita. So since he didn't really go into detail, he feels that obviously the beginning of shechita is okay. Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak's proof rests on the assumption that spouting is equivalent to other indicators of vitality. The Gemara challenges this assumption, of course, because that's how the Gemara works. Every time we say something, we then question or challenge it. We keep on going until we end up with a resolution or take over. That's like Yitzchak. And then if you want to know the halacha, you look it up in Shulchan Aruch, or you consult your local rabbi. Okay, continuing our learning process. By the way, I have to stop at 8:15 to drive to shul so I can make the first Kaddish. The Dilma Shani Zinuk, the Adif, perhaps spouting is different. Okay, so now we're going to question, maybe the spouting is different from the flexion of the foreleg, and therefore you can't draw an analogy. Okay, because in other words, we're saying maybe it demonstrates a greater level of vitality than the other jerking movements. It is therefore effective even if it occurs at the beginning of Shechita. So they're saying, you know what? Maybe you still need stuff at the end of Shechita. The only reason spouting of the blood is considered okay at the beginning is because it's different. All right, whatever. Fight them. Right. The Gemara challenges this supposition. Okay. But if it's true that spouting is question, it's a rhetorical way. Is it true that spouting is a superior indicator of life? Can't be. Why? Because we learned the Mishnah something else. No, we've learned in the Mishnah. This is wonderful because it's the first time we've been in this share in a long time. And every time we want to bring the proof, we're bringing it from another Mishnah, which means another Mishnah that has a Gemara attached to it. And we're not saying Tanya that we learned in the Brisa, just this free-flowing Mishnah that has no Gemara attached to it. Everything so far has been snug. Listen, yeah. Okay. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Daya im Zikna. Rabbi Eliezer says it's sufficient for it that it's spouted blood, which implies Rabbi Eliezer's standard is less demanding. So what they're saying here is it's not superior. It's still good. It's not as good as the animal flexing its foreleg, but it's still good as a sign of life if it's spouted blood. The Gemara responds, Kol mid'Rabbanan, Gamliel va'adif mid'Rabbanan. Spouting is less than an indicator than the one used by Rabban Gamliel, who requires that the animal move both its foreleg and its hind leg. This is a third opinion. Up until now, we were only talking about the foreleg. Now we're saying that according to Rabban Gamliel, the animal has to move both the foreleg and the hind leg in order to prove signs of life. It's very interesting, because nowadays the whole concern is always medically signs of death. Here we're talking about signs of life in order to make sure the shechita was okay to kill the animal kosher so that we can eat it. This is totally wild concept. All right. So I got this. This is what God wanted. Okay, so Rabban Gamliel requires both foreleg and hind leg, and that's superior to those of the rabbis, the Chamim, who require only the animal retract its foreleg. So we have three opinions here: the foreleg, both legs, or the spouting of the blood, and we're kind of commenting on which is the most serious and which is the least serious and how they all count. Okay, hold on. My phone Siri is listening to the shir. I don't know if they want to give me an answer, right? Okay, the Gemara challenges this answer. Amar Avina, are you still with me, Moshe? People? Yes. I want to make sure I'm not talking to myself.
You're not talking to yourself. It just takes a minute for me to get back to my microphone.
Yeah, I know that. Okay, thank you.
It's horrible. You try to look for it, it never shows up.
Okay, I've been there, done that. Okay, all right. And Moshe, don't forget to send me what I owe you on the Zelle for the ride. Okay, that's just personal from me to you. It has nothing to do with the shir. The Gemara challenges this answer. Amar Avina Amali Sama Bach Chilkai. Chilkai. Two vowels there. Ravina said, Rav Sama said, Aksheba Abua Deva Abuvram, so that the father of Bar Avruam raised the difficulty against this suggestion. That, by the way, it's very interesting. So they don't say the father's name. He just says it's the father of Bar Avruam. It's like George Washington's white horse. So they always say, what's its color? White. So what's the father's name? the father of him. So his son must have been a very important person, and everyone knew him by his son. But he made it into the big leagues because he's here in the Gemara, right? So what did he say? So what did he say? Some say, some people say it was his brother, right? This is a question. Is spouting indeed the superior indicator of vitality than that of the rabbi's retraction of the foreleg? All right, and now we're questioning that. We had mentioned that before. But none, all right, so we've learned in the Mishnah, Nachamo in the Mishnah, V'chamim omrim ad shetiparkes obiyad oberego. Sages say the animal is not permitted, in other words, to become kosher, unless it jerks either a foreleg or a hind leg. Also, it's interesting. Now the Chachamim is saying not both legs, but has to do one leg or the other leg. So it seems we actually, even though we said we have three opinions, where he's bringing from here is kind of a fourth opinion. Rabbanan Ahai Kaime. Now let's consider the rabbis, to whom are they responding? Ilema Ada Rabbanan Gamliel. If you say they're responding to the statement of Rabban Gamliel, who said that the animal isn't kosher unless it jerked both legs. All right, that was what we said before, the foreleg and the hind leg. Kevin the Pirkes Baile, then they should have responded. Once it jerks, either it's foreleg or it's hind leg, it's kosher. Elapshita the Rabbi Eliezer. Rather, it's obvious to them at least, that the rabbis are responding to the blood situation, to the ruling of Rabbi Eliezer, who says that spouting blood is sufficient. The adif ma'ad, but if spouting is superior to moving a leg as an indicator of vitality, then so why do the rabbis use the term unless, which indicates that their position is more stringent? In other words, that they're saying, yeah, you know what? Spouting is good, but he still has to, on top of that, the animal still has to move a leg, right? So we see from this, Rabbi Eliezer's standard spouting is actually the most leaning of the three mentioned in the Mishnah. So all this was said just to kind of decide where to place on the podium of the Olympics, the gold, silver, and who is the least and who is the most. So according to this final Mishnah that was brought, then Rabbi Eliezer and the spouting of blood ends up at the copper medal. All right. The Gemara now cites a third view concerning when jerking must take place to be effective. Again, we're still following the same theme. Show me a sign of life. Rabbi Amar, Rabbi says, Pirka Shamra B'Sav Shchita. The jerking of which the sages spoke about has to occur at the end of Shchita. Rabbi cites proof. So let's see where he brings this proof from. Amar Rabbi says, Mina Minala. How do I know this? Finally, Tisanya. He brings it from a brisa. Finally, first brisa to bring supportive proof. From where do we learn this in the brisa? So he says, sure, or chesed, an ox or a sheep. So now we're bringing, in that brisa, it's talking about behema gasa as well as behema daka. You know, the big guys and the small guys, the heavy artillery and the small guns. And there is a difference because obviously the strength of the muscles to, let's say, hold up a cow or a bull have to be enormous, big muscles. It's a lot different than a little tiny lamb. Mary had a little lamb. It doesn't take much to keep that up. Just try it. Pick up a lamb or pick up a bull or a cow, So there's a big difference, all right? So the animal has to pick itself up. It's not picking up by its boots, right? Because prat lechloim, this excludes a hybrid. So what is this price about? Why it's mentioning a cow or a bull, whatever was an ox. Wait, let me go back here. An ox, shua or chesed, all right? An ox or a sheep. So the first thing it excludes is Klayim, a hybrid animal. We learned, for those of you who learned what you call it, Chullin last year. I mean, 7.5 years ago, I remember this. We had the book, we look at pictures. There were animals that basically are hybrids. And yeah, the mother's a sheep, the father's a goat, and it comes out geep or whatever you want to call it, and we did see pictures of those strange. So that can't be brought as for a shechita, as a sacrifice. OAs or a goat. So when was it? Okay. Oh, a goat can't be brought. Just stop saying that. Prat lenidnber. This excludes a resembler. In other words, a mutant. Oh, that was the picture we had, which both is born of goats and has appearance of a sheep. That was, I think, the picture we saw then. And for those of you who weren't with us then, we did see pictures of such animals. I guess in the old days of the midways and the fairs, they'd have mutant animals. Okay, so they could not be brought as for shechita. Prat liyotze dofen, one from a C-section. Shivas yamin, one for that was less than 7 days, because the pasuk says it has to stay, 8 days with a mother somewhere. Right. Prat lemechusa zman. This includes an animal that's lacking in time. Oh yeah, that's the one that's not. I haven't been reading this. I've been reading it like it's double, but what it is it names the animal and then it explains that is to include the ones that resemble but is different. This C-section, that's each. I didn't interpret it right. It's not. I didn't. Each of those things was it made a statement. And why did it make that? Because it excludes this. Why make the next one? To exclude this. Okay. So prat mechus zman, all right, is for one less than a week old. Tachasimo, under its mother, prasli yasim. This excludes an orphan, meaning where the mother died at childbirth, but it died before the animal birth, the animal was born. Well, you can see, and obviously raises a question. If it already died and then it couldn't deliver the animal naturally, they'd have to cut open the mother animal, cat, whatever, to take out the baby that's still alive. So that's a C-section. We've already explored C-section, so it's redundant. So we're going to go into that. Rava analyzes the last teaching of the Brisa as a prelude to his proof. Hayasim, this orphan animal that the Brisa excludes as serving as a sacrifice, hechidami. All right, what's the case? Lema delidite amai bahada mesa. If you say the Brisa is speaking about a case where the mother gave birth and then died, what do you want? You want the mother cow to live forever? It's eventually going to die anyway, so you haven't put his mind on it there are times. So that can't be it. Ella the mesa of a hada yelidita. Rather, you say that the case of the orphan is where the mother died and then gave birth. Well, if it couldn't be the first way, it has to be the other one. All right. Miki yivalad nafka. Nafka, but this is derived from the phrase where it's born. This is why I just mentioned. Elapshita, ze perish lemita, ze perish l'chaim. In other words, it can't be later, it can't be before, because they're excluded by the other ways we learn. It means it was simultaneous, that as one was going out, one was coming in. In other words, the mother animal died at childbirth. All right, and that's what the case was referring to. All right. Binyamin was born at the childbirth of right? Rachel, right? She died at childbirth, Rachel Menu, and Binyamin, Halach counted amongst all the tribes. So it's a different concept, but we didn't say he was puzzled or anything like that because he was born at the moment his mother died. Like he wasn't a road aid or something like that. Yeah, it's a different thing. Okay, weiter. Later. Now, if you say that we require vitality at the conclusion of the birth, all this is well. For this is why a separate birth is needed to exclude an orphan. But if you say we don't require vitality at the conclusion of the birth, so why is there a need for the verse to exclude an orphan whose mother died during childbirth? Miki Valed Nafka, we could have learned it from when it's born. Right? Since the Torah does have a separate verse to exclude an orphan, we must conclude that the Torah requires that the mother remain alive until at least the moment, doesn't say at least, but the moment after the completion of the birth. We see from this that wherever there is a requirement of life, life must be present at the very end of the thing, and for a moment after. So that was the Shir Zman, a moment, I don't know if that's a second or a third, the second, whatever, a moment. Thus, in the case of Shechita too, there must be signs of life after the completion of the Shechita of a dying animal. It's very interesting. Okay. The Gemara returns to the issue of what constitutes pirkus. Right? Again, pirkus is the jerking movements that establish this halacha. We're on 38 B2, a little bit above the second Tosfos inside the Gemara. Amar Rava stated, Masnisa. The law is in accordance with the following brisa. Second brisa we're bringing. Behemadaka, an animal, small animal, like a sheep or a goat. Shepashta yada, that extended its foreleg, but he didn't bring it back. So it did extension, which is expected because when an animal dies, it's going to extend its limb. But it didn't bring it back, which would require a living strength to do that. But what's the circumstances here? Beyond, if we're talking about a foreleg, that's what we're saying. That's the answer. Aval berego, but where it's a hind leg, ben pshita below kafafa, whether it extended it and didn't retract it, ben kafafa below pshita, or whether retracted it but didn't extend it, kashera, it is kosher. So that's very interesting. All right. So what it's saying is there is a difference between, according to Rava, from this brisa, that there's a difference between the forelegs and the hind legs, all right? And that makes sense medically, because even in the cow, most of the strength of holding up a cow, I think 60%, it's definitely more than 50, is on the hind legs more than the front legs. Even you look at a cat jumps with its hind legs, that's the strength. It lands with its springs, the forelegs, It can't jump with its forelegs, all right? So, remember, in what circumstance is this rule said? The daka, in regards to a small animal, is a sheep or a goat. Bagasa, but regard to a large animal like an ox, ben biyad, ben baragel, whether it's a foreleg or the hind leg, ben pasture below kafafa, whether it extended or didn't, and didn't flex, ben kafafa below pasture, whether retracted the leg, flexed it, but then extended shera. All right, it's kosher. So why is the difference? Seems to me the difference again is because the bigger animal, those muscles are all much stronger. So whatever action it did required a strong muscle, which means it required to fight against the other side strong muscle, and therefore it was a sign of life, and not just whatever, gravity was pulling. All right. For off, okay, last question. We got 3 minutes. What about a bird? Afilu lo riffraff, riffraff elagofo. Even if it was only fluttering its wings, velo bishkesh ela znovo, or only wagged its tail, not tail, the end of the fluttering part. Yeah, I guess it is a tail on a bird, right? Hareze pirkus. So that's how you seek the jerking on the bird. My mashmalan. So what is Rabbi teaching us from this? Kulu to none he. All of these laws stated in the Braisa have been taught in the Mishnah, which states Behemadaka shepashta yada below hechsira psula shena ela hotzas. Wait, okay. A small animal extend its foreleg but then retract is not kosher. Shena ela hotzas nefesh, because that's just a normal post-mortem action. Yad ein, in the case of the foreleg, yes. Regolob. In the case of the hind leg, that's not so. Even extension alone suffices. Additionally, we confer daka in small animal extension without retraction is not a vitality gasalo, but it doesn't apply to the gasa. We just discussed it. Of Itzrachle, Rava needed to quote the Brisa. So why did he need to quote the Brisa? I needed it for the bird. The Lotznan, because we hadn't stated the bird in the Mishnah. Okay, so I have to stop here. We're up to the Mishnah in the middle of Lamed Ches. Thank you for hanging in there with me. Have a wonderful day. And I think Rabbi's taking over tomorrow. See you, I went to shul. Bye-bye. See you, Moshe. Bye, Rabbi. Rabbi's father.